The rain pounded against the tall windows of Blackstone Industries as Marcus Williams pushed his cleaning cart down the marble hallway. His worn sneakers squeaked softly on the polished floor, the only sound breaking the silence of the empty 42nd floor. It was nearly midnight, and most of the building's employees had gone home hours ago. Marcus preferred it this way. The quiet gave him time to think, to plan for his daughter's college tuition, to dream of better days ahead. At 53, Marcus had been cleaning offices for over 20 years. His back ached constantly, his hands were rough from chemicals, but he took pride in his work. Every surface gleamed when he finished, every trash bin was emptied, every window sparkled. He might be invisible to most people who worked in these fancy offices, but he knew his worth. As he rounded the corner toward the executive suites, Marcus heard something unusual. A soft sobbing echoed from behind the heavy oak door marked Richard Blackstone, CEO. Marcus paused, his hand tightening on the mop handle. Mr. Blackstone was known to work late, but Marcus had never heard him cry. The man was famous for his iron composure, his ruthless business decisions, his complete control over every situation. The crying grew louder, more desperate. Marcus knocked gently on the door. "Mr. Blackstone? Sir, is everything all right?" The crying stopped abruptly. After a moment, a young woman's voice called out, "Come in, please." Marcus hesitated. He wasn't supposed to enter the executive offices unless they were empty. But something in the voice sounded so broken, so desperate, that he couldn't walk away. He opened the door slowly. Inside the massive office, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, Marcus saw a young woman sitting behind the enormous mahogany desk. She looked to be in her early 20s, with long auburn hair and red-rimmed eyes. Her expensive dress was wrinkled, her makeup smeared from tears. Marcus recognized her immediately from the company newsletters and newspaper photos. This was Emma Blackstone, the CEO's only daughter. "Miss Blackstone," Marcus said softly, stepping into the room. "Are you okay?" Emma looked up at him with eyes full of pain and desperation. "You're Marcus, aren't you? The night janitor." Marcus nodded, surprised she knew his name. "Yes, miss. Is there anything I can do to help?" Emma's face crumpled, and fresh tears began to flow. "Please," she whispered, "please help my dad. They're killing him." Marcus felt his heart race. "What? Who's killing him? Should I call the police?" "No," Emma said quickly, standing up from the chair. "You don't understand. It's not like that. It's slower, more careful. They're destroying him piece by piece. And I don't know how to stop it." Marcus set down his mop and stepped closer. Despite the difference in their social status, he saw something in Emma that reminded him of his own daughter. The same vulnerability, the same need for someone to listen and care. "Tell me what's happening," Marcus said gently. Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "My father built this company from nothing. 40 years ago, he started with just a small construction business. He worked 18-hour days, slept in his truck, ate nothing but cheap sandwiches. He built Blackstone Industries into what it is today through pure determination and honest work." Marcus nodded. He had heard some of Richard Blackstone's story before, though not in such personal detail. "But 3 years ago, everything changed," Emma continued. "Dad had a mild heart attack. Nothing too serious, but it scared him. He started thinking about retirement, about spending more time with family. That's when his business partners convinced him to bring in outside investors to help run the company." "That sounds reasonable," Marcus said. Emma shook her head bitterly. "That's what Dad thought too. But these investors, they're not what they seemed. The main group is led by a man named Victor Ashford. He's smooth, charming, always wearing expensive suits, and speaking in that cultured accent. Dad trusted him completely." Emma walked to the window, looking out at the city lights below. At first, everything seemed fine. Ashford and his people brought in new technology, streamlined operations, increased profits. Dad was impressed. He gave them more and more control over day-to-day operations while he stepped back. "But something went wrong?" Marcus asked. "Everything went wrong," Emma said, turning back to face him. "It took me months to figure out what was really happening. Ashford isn't just an investor. He's part of a group that specializes in corporate takeovers. They identify successful family businesses, gain the owner's trust, then slowly take control of everything." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "How?" They use a combination of legal manipulation, financial pressure, and psychological warfare, Emma explained. First, they create financial problems within the company. They approve bad investments, sign unfavorable contracts, make decisions that look reasonable on the surface but actually drain money from the business. Emma pulled out a thick folder from the desk drawer. I've been investigating for months, collecting evidence. Look at this. She showed Marcus a series of financial documents. 6 months ago, Ashford convinced Dad to invest $12 million in a new construction project in Malaysia. The project was supposed to be incredibly profitable, backed by the Malaysian government. Marcus looked at the papers, trying to understand the complex financial language. The project was fake, Emma said. The Malaysian officials were paid actors, the government documents were forged, the entire thing was an elaborate scam. $12 million gone, just like that. Did you tell your father? Emma's face darkened. I tried. But here's the clever part of Ashford's plan. While they were stealing money from the company, they were also isolating Dad from everyone who might warn him. They convinced him that the employees were disloyal, that his old friends were jealous of his success, that even his family didn't understand the pressures of modern business. Marcus began to understand the scope of the problem. So when you tried to tell him about the scam, he thought I was being paranoid and jealous, Emma finished. Ashford had already planted seeds of doubt about me. He told Dad that young people today don't understand how business really works, that I was probably being influenced by college professors with anti-business attitudes. Emma sat down heavily in one of the leather chairs facing the desk. But the financial theft is just the beginning. The real goal is to drive Dad into complete dependency on them. They're slowly taking over every aspect of the business. They've replaced most of the senior management with their own people. They've changed the company's banking relationships, legal representation, even the accounting firm. And your father doesn't see what's happening. They're very good at what they do, Emma said. Every change is presented as necessary for the company's growth and modernization. When Dad questions something, they show him carefully prepared reports that make everything look reasonable. They've even hired a team of consultants to create fake industry analysis that supports their decisions. Marcus thought about his own experiences with manipulation and control. He had seen similar patterns in his personal life, though never on such a massive scale. What about the other employees? Don't they see what's happening? Most of the long-term employees have been fired or forced to quit, Emma said. Ashford's people created reasons to get rid of anyone who might be loyal to Dad. They accused some of embezzlement, others of incompetence, others of sexual harassment. All false, but difficult to prove. Emma stood up and began pacing around the office. The employees who remain are either new hires who work for Ashford or people who are too scared to speak up. Ashford has created an atmosphere of fear and suspicion throughout the company. What about evidence? Can't you prove what they're doing? That's the problem, Emma said, frustration clear in her voice. Everything they do is technically legal. The contracts are real, even if they're unfavorable. The investments are actual investments, even if they're designed to fail. The personnel changes are documented with proper reasons, even if those reasons are fabricated. Marcus understood why Emma felt so helpless. So even if you could convince your father, there might not be anything he could do about it. Exactly, Emma said. And the worst part is, I think Dad is starting to realize something is wrong, but he doesn't know what to do about it. He's been having more health problems. His blood pressure is through the roof. He's not sleeping. He's lost weight. The stress is killing him, literally. Emma pulled out her phone and showed Marcus a photo. It showed Richard Blackstone from 6 months ago, looking healthy and confident at a company event. Then, she showed him another photo from last week. The difference was shocking. The man in the recent photo looked 10 years older, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow with exhaustion and worry. Yesterday, he had another heart episode, Emma said quietly. Not a full heart attack, but the doctors said he's at serious risk. They want him to take a leave of absence from work, but he can't. If he steps away now, Ashford will complete the takeover while he's gone. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. He had seen powerful people take advantage of working-class folks his entire life. But this level of calculated cruelty was beyond anything he had experienced. Why are you telling me this? Marcus asked. I'm just a janitor. I don't know anything about business or law. Emma looked at him with desperate hope. Because you're the only person in this building who doesn't work for Ashford, who doesn't have a reason to lie to me or manipulate me. And because she hesitated, then continued, because I've watched you work. You care about doing things right. You pay attention to details. You notice things that other people miss. Marcus thought about all the conversations he had overheard while cleaning offices, all the documents he had seen in trash bins, all the late-night meetings he had witnessed while working in the building. What do you want me to do? He asked. Help me gather real evidence, Emma said. Not just financial documents that can be explained away, but proof of the conspiracy. Recordings of their private conversations, emails between the conspirators, documentation of the fake companies and shell corporations they're using. Emma pulled out an envelope and handed it to Marcus. This contains access codes for the building's security system, including the areas where Ashford and his people have their offices. I also have a list of the fake companies and bank accounts I've discovered, and the names of the key people involved in the conspiracy. Marcus opened the envelope and looked at the contents. It was more complicated than anything he had ever been involved with, but he understood the basic idea. You want me to use my access to the building to spy on them? Yes, Emma said, but carefully, safely. I don't want you to get hurt or lose your job. We just need to document what they're really doing, get proof that can't be explained away. Marcus thought about his own daughter, about the tuition payments he was struggling to make, about the risks of getting involved in something like this. But he also thought about Richard Blackstone, whom he had occasionally seen working late into the night, a man who had built something real and valuable through honest work. What happens if we succeed? Marcus asked. What happens if we get the evidence you need? Then, we can save Dad's company and probably send some very bad people to prison, Emma said. Ashford and his group have probably done this to other families, other businesses. If we can expose them, we might be able to help a lot of people. 2 weeks had passed since Marcus agreed to help Emma Blackstone. During the day, he maintained his normal routine, cleaning offices and staying invisible to the corporate world around him. But, at night, his work had taken on a completely different meaning. He was no longer just a janitor emptying trash cans and mopping floors. He had become a spy in a war being fought in boardrooms and executive suites. Emma had been right about Marcus's unique position in the building. As the night janitor, he had access to virtually every office, every conference room, every computer terminal that wasn't properly secured. More importantly, he was completely invisible to the people plotting against Richard Blackstone. They discussed their plans openly while he cleaned around them, treating him as if he were just another piece of furniture. On this particular Tuesday night, Marcus was cleaning the 38th floor, where Victor Ashford and his team had set up their operations. Emma had told him that this was where the real planning happened, away from Richard Blackstone's executive suite on the 42nd floor. As Marcus mopped the hallway outside Ashford's corner office, he heard voices coming from inside. The door was slightly open, allowing him to hear the conversation clearly. He recognized Ashford's smooth, cultured voice immediately. The Malaysian project was perfect, Ashford was saying. 12 million gone. And the old man still thinks it was just bad luck. He's starting to doubt his own judgment. Another voice, which Marcus recognized as belonging to David Chun, Ashford's chief financial officer, responded. The beauty is that we can do it again. I've identified 3 more fake investment opportunities that will look completely legitimate to Blackstone. We can drain another 20 million over the next 6 months. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. He quietly moved his cart closer to the door, pretending to clean the water fountain nearby. 20 million should be enough to push him to the breaking point, said a third voice. Marcus thought it belonged to Sarah Mitchell, Ashford's legal counsel. Our psychological profile indicates that Blackstone's self-confidence is already severely damaged. A few more major financial losses, and he'll be ready to sign over complete control of the company. Ashford laughed coldly. The man built a billion-dollar empire, and we're going to take it from him using nothing but his own insecurities and trust issues. It's almost too easy. Marcus felt sick to his stomach. These people were talking about destroying a man's life and life's work as if it were just a game. He wished he could record the conversation, but Emma had warned him against carrying any recording devices. If he were caught, it would expose their entire operation. What about the daughter? Chen asked. Emma's been asking a lot of questions lately. She requested access to the Malaysian project files last week. Emma Blackstone is a spoiled little rich girl with a sociology degree, Mitchell replied dismissively. She doesn't understand business, and her father knows it. Every time she raises concerns, she just reinforces his belief that young people today are naive and unrealistic about how the world works. Still, Ashford said thoughtfully, we should keep an eye on her. Intelligence and determination can be more dangerous than business experience. If she starts to cause real problems, we may need to take more direct action. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The way Ashford said direct action sounded distinctly threatening. What kind of direct action? Chen asked. Nothing too dramatic, Ashford replied. Maybe arrange for her to have some personal problems that require her attention. A legal issue, a financial crisis, a romantic scandal. Something that keeps her busy and makes her father lose even more confidence in her judgment. Marcus realized that Emma was in more danger than either of them had realized. These people weren't just thieves. They were willing to destroy anyone who got in their way. The conversation inside the office shifted to technical details about their next fake investment scheme. Marcus listened carefully, memorizing every detail he could. According to their plan, they were going to convince Richard Blackstone to invest in a supposedly revolutionary new construction technology being developed by a startup company in Singapore. The technology was real, but the startup was secretly owned by shell corporations controlled by Ashford's group. They would use Blackstone's investment to pay themselves massive consulting fees, then declare the project a failure after the money was gone. After about 30 minutes, the meeting broke up. Marcus quickly moved away from the door, focusing on cleaning a section of hallway further down the corridor. He watched as the three conspirators left Ashford's office, walking past him without so much as a glance in his direction. Once they were gone, Marcus returned to Ashford's office to empty the trash cans. He was hoping to find some useful documents, but the office was kept meticulously clean. However, as he was emptying the shredder basket, he noticed something interesting. There were several strips of paper that hadn't been shredded completely. Some of them appeared to be fragments of bank routing numbers and account information. Marcus carefully collected the paper fragments and put them in a separate bag. Emma had given him special containers for anything that might be useful evidence. He would turn everything over to her at their next meeting. As Marcus continued his cleaning rounds, he thought about what he had learned. The scope of the conspiracy was larger than he had imagined. These people had clearly done this before, probably many times. They had developed a sophisticated system for taking over companies, and they were very good at it. But Marcus had also heard something that gave him hope. Despite their confidence, the conspirators were worried about Emma. They recognized that she was intelligent and determined, even if they underestimated her. That meant their plan wasn't foolproof. If Marcus and Emma could gather enough evidence and present it effectively, they might be able to stop the takeover. The next night, Marcus met Emma in her father's office again. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and a haggard expression. The stress of fighting to save her father's company while pretending everything was normal was clearly taking its toll. "How's your father?" Marcus asked as he entered the office. "Getting worse," Emma replied sadly. "He had another episode yesterday. The doctors want to put him on stronger heart medication, but the side effects will make it even harder for him to concentrate on work. Ashford is probably hoping Dad will become so impaired that he'll sign anything they put in front of him." Marcus felt angry again. These people weren't just stealing money. They were literally endangering Richard Blackstone's life. "I have news," Marcus said. He told Emma everything he had overheard in Ashford's office, including the details about the Singapore technology investment and the threats against Emma herself. Emma's face grew pale as Marcus described the conversation. "They're planning to destroy my reputation if I get too close to exposing them?" "That's what it sounded like," Marcus confirmed. "You need to be very careful. These people are more dangerous than we thought." Emma was quiet for a moment, processing the information. Then, she said, "Actually, this might work in our favor. If they're planning to approach Dad with another fake investment, we can prepare for it. We can document their presentation, research the supposed Singapore company, maybe even set up surveillance to catch them in the act." Marcus handed Emma the bag containing the shredded paper fragments. "I also found these in Ashford's shredder. Some of the pieces look like they might be account numbers or routing information. Emma's eyes lit up as she examined the fragments. This is incredible, Marcus. If we can piece these together, we might be able to trace their financial networks. Bank records could provide the evidence we need to prove they're operating shell companies and fake investment schemes. Over the next hour, Emma and Marcus worked together to reconstruct the shredded documents. It was like working on a complex jigsaw puzzle, trying to match torn edges and partial numbers. Eventually, they managed to piece together most of two documents. One appeared to be a wire transfer receipt for $2.3 million from Blackstone Industries to a bank account in the Cayman Islands. The other was a memo discussing the distribution of funds among various shell companies. This is it, Emma said excitedly. This proves that money from Dad's company is being funneled to offshore accounts controlled by Ashford's group. We can use this to trace the entire financial network. But Marcus was worried about something else. Emma, if they're willing to threaten you directly, we need to think about your safety. Maybe you should tell your father what's happening, even if he doesn't believe you at first. Emma shook her head. Not yet. Dad's too vulnerable right now. The stress of learning about the conspiracy might cause another heart attack. We need to have complete, undeniable evidence before we approach him. Then, we need to be smarter about how we do this, Marcus said. We should document everything we're doing, keep copies of all evidence in multiple locations, maybe even involve a lawyer or investigator we can trust. Emma considered this. I have a friend from college who works for the FBI's white-collar crime unit. I've been thinking about contacting her, but I want to make sure we have enough evidence to make a strong case first. Marcus nodded. That's smart. But, in the meantime, we should assume they're watching you. Don't do anything that seems out of character. Keep acting like the naive college graduate they think you are. Over the following weeks, Marcus and Emma refined their investigation strategy. Marcus would continue to gather intelligence during his night cleaning rounds, while Emma worked during the day to research the companies and individuals involved in the conspiracy. They communicated through a secure email account that Emma had set up using an encrypted service. Marcus discovered that Ashford's team held their most sensitive meetings in a small conference room on the 39th floor every Thursday night after 10 p.m. The room had a sophisticated security system, but Marcus had the master access codes that Emma had provided. He began scheduling his cleaning of that floor for Thursday nights, allowing him to overhear their weekly planning sessions. During one of these sessions, Marcus learned about the full scope of Ashford's operation. They weren't just targeting Blackstone Industries. They were simultaneously working on takeovers of at least 3 other family-owned businesses across the country. They had a network of fake investors, shell companies, and corrupt professionals that spanned multiple states and countries. Marcus also discovered that the conspiracy went deeper than financial theft. Ashford's group was connected to organized crime figures who specialized in corporate extortion and money laundering. The takeover of legitimate businesses was just one part of a larger criminal enterprise. As Marcus gathered more evidence, he began to understand why Emma was so desperate to save her father's company. This wasn't just about money or family pride. Richard Blackstone had built something valuable and legitimate, and he employed hundreds of people who depended on their jobs to support their families. If Ashford's group succeeded in their takeover, they would probably strip the company of its assets, fire most of the employees, and leave nothing but an empty shell. But Marcus also realized that he and Emma were up against professionals who had resources and connections far beyond what they had initially understood. These people had successfully stolen millions of dollars from multiple victims, and they had never been caught. They knew how to cover their tracks, how to manipulate legal systems, and how to eliminate threats to their operations. The danger was real, and it was growing every day. Marcus began to notice that his own movements around the building were being watched more carefully. Security guards who had never paid attention to him before were now asking questions about his cleaning schedule. Ashford's assistant had started staying late more often, seemingly for no other reason than to monitor who was in the building after hours. Marcus knew that time was running out. They needed to complete their investigation and take action before Ashford's group realized they were being watched. But they also needed to be incredibly careful. One mistake could cost them everything, including possibly their lives. As Marcus finished his cleaning rounds that Thursday night, he made a decision. It was time to accelerate their investigation, even if it meant taking greater risks. Richard Blackstone's health was deteriorating rapidly, and Emma was showing signs of severe stress and exhaustion. They couldn't afford to wait much longer. The breaking point came on a cold Friday evening in November. Marcus was cleaning the 42nd floor when he heard shouting coming from Richard Blackstone's office. Through the thick oak door, he could hear the CEO's voice, strained and angry, arguing with someone. Marcus recognized the other voice as belonging to Victor Ashford. "This is insane, Victor," Richard was saying. "You want me to invest another $15 million in a company that I've never heard of, based on a technology report that looks like it was written by a high school student? What kind of due diligence is this?" "Richard, you need to trust the process," Ashford replied in his smooth, condescending tone. "Modern investment opportunities move quickly. If we wait too long to conduct traditional due diligence, we'll lose the opportunity to competitors." "I've been in business for 40 years, Richard snapped. "I didn't build this company by throwing money at every shiny new technology that someone put in front of me. This Singapore deal smells wrong, just like that Malaysian disaster." Marcus felt a surge of hope. It sounded like Richard Blackstone was finally starting to question Ashford's investment advice. "Richard, I understand your concerns," Ashford continued, his voice becoming more urgent. "But you have to understand that the business world has changed dramatically in the past few years. The old ways of doing business are obsolete. If Blackstone Industries is going to remain competitive, we need to embrace new opportunities, even if they seem risky. Don't lecture me about the business world." Richard's voice was getting louder, more strained. "I've been watching this company's finances, and nothing makes sense anymore. Our profits are up, but our cash flow is down. We're supposedly making great investments, but our liquid assets keep disappearing. Either you're incompetent, or something very bad is happening here." There was a moment of silence. Marcus could imagine Ashford calculating his next move, deciding how much he could reveal without exposing the entire conspiracy. "Richard," Ashford said finally, his voice taking on a more serious tone, "I think you need to consider the possibility that your judgment might be affected by the stress you've been under. The hard episodes, the medication, the long hours you've been working. Maybe it's time to step back and let the management team handle the day-to-day operations. Are you questioning my mental competence?" Richard's voice was dangerous now. "I'm questioning whether you're in the right state of mind to make major decisions about the company's future," Ashford replied. "And I'm not the only one. The board of directors has expressed concerns about your ability to lead effectively under these circumstances." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. This was it. This was how Ashford planned to complete the takeover. He was going to have Richard Blackstone declared mentally incompetent. The board. Richard's voice had changed, becoming quieter but more dangerous. "The board that you helped me select? The board that consists mostly of your business associates and people you recommended." "Richard, you're being paranoid," Ashford said. "These are respected business leaders who have the company's best interests at heart." "Get out," Richard said quietly. "What? Get out of my office. Get out of my building. You're fired, Victor. All of you. I want you and your entire team out of here by Monday morning." Marcus heard the sound of a chair being pushed back roughly. "Richard, you can't do this," Ashford said, his smooth facade finally cracking. "You don't have the authority to fire the entire management team. The board won't allow it." "We'll see about that," Richard replied. "This is still my company, and I'm still the majority shareholder. If the board doesn't like my decisions, they can try to vote me out. But until then, you work for me, and I'm telling you to get out." Marcus heard footsteps moving toward the door. He quickly moved away, pushing his cleaning cart down the hallway as if he had been working there all along. Ashford emerged from the office, his face dark with anger. For the first time since Marcus had known him, the man looked rattled. As Ashford walked past Marcus toward the elevators, he was talking rapidly into his cell phone. "We have a problem," he was saying. "The old man is having a moment of clarity. We need to accelerate the timeline. Yes, I understand the risks, but we may not have a choice." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Whatever Ashford was planning, it was going to happen soon. After Ashford left, Marcus waited a few minutes before approaching Richard Blackstone's office. The door was still open, and he could see the CEO sitting behind his desk, his head in his hands. The man looked completely exhausted. Mr. Blackstone? Marcus said softly. Sir, are you all right? Richard looked up, and Marcus was shocked by what he saw. The man's face was gray with fatigue, his eyes were bloodshot, and his hands were trembling slightly. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past few months. Marcus, Richard said, recognizing the janitor. Yes, I'm fine. Just having a difficult evening. Marcus stepped into the office, closing the door behind him. Sir, I think you should know that your daughter has been very worried about you. Richard's expression softened slightly. Emma. Yes, she's been asking a lot of questions lately. Questions about the business, about our new investors. She thinks I'm making mistakes. Maybe you should listen to her, Marcus suggested carefully. Richard looked at Marcus with surprise. It was probably the first time a janitor had offered him business advice. Marcus, you've been working in this building for a long time, Richard said. You see things, hear things. Have you noticed anything unusual lately? Anything that seems wrong? Marcus made a quick decision. It was time to take a risk. Sir, I think you should have a long conversation with your daughter. Tonight. She has things to tell you that you need to hear. Richard studied Marcus's face for a moment. You know something, don't you? About what's been happening to my company. Before Marcus could answer, his cell phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Emma. Emergency. Meet me at Dad's office now. They're moving against us. Marcus showed the message to Richard. Sir, I think your daughter is in trouble. Richard's face immediately became alert and focused, the exhaustion replaced by concern for his daughter. What kind of trouble? The kind that could get her hurt if we don't act quickly, Marcus replied. Richard stood up from his desk, his movements suddenly decisive. Tell me everything you know. Right now. Over the next 30 minutes, Marcus told Richard Blackstone everything. He described his partnership with Emma, the evidence they had gathered, the conversations he had overheard, and the scope of Ashford's conspiracy. He showed Richard the reconstructed documents they had pieced together from Ashford's shredded papers. As Marcus spoke, Richard's expression went through a range of emotions. Shock, anger, disbelief, and, finally, a cold fury that Marcus found more frightening than any of Ashford's threats. They've been planning this for 3 years, Richard said quietly when Marcus finished. Everything. The heart attack that made me think about retirement, the introduction to Ashford, the gradual takeover of my management team. It was all planned. It looks that way, sir, Marcus confirmed. Richard picked up his phone and called Emma. The call went straight to voicemail. Emma, it's Dad. Call me immediately. I know about Ashford and what he's been doing. Marcus told me everything. We need to talk right now. Richard tried calling Emma's apartment, her cell phone, and several of her friends. No one had seen her since earlier that afternoon. We need to find her, Richard said, his voice tight with worry. Marcus thought about what he had overheard earlier. Ashford had been talking about accelerating their timeline and taking more direct action against threats to their operation. Sir, Marcus said, I think they might have taken Emma somewhere. Maybe to keep her quiet while they complete their takeover of the company. Richard's face went white. You think they kidnapped my daughter? I think they're desperate enough to do anything at this point, Marcus replied. They've invested too much time and money in this operation to let it fail now. Richard reached for his phone to call the police, but Marcus stopped him. Wait, Marcus said. If we call the police now, they'll demand proof of a kidnapping. We don't have any evidence that Emma's been taken, just that we can't reach her. The police will probably assume she's just out for the evening. Richard lowered the phone, understanding the problem. Besides, Marcus continued, Ashford has connections throughout the legal and financial communities. He might have contacts in law enforcement too. If we call the police, he might find out about it before they take any action. Then, what do we do? Richard asked. Marcus thought about everything Emma had told him about Ashford's operation. We use what Emma already discovered. She said she had a friend who works for the FBI's white-collar crime unit. Maybe we should contact her directly. Richard nodded. Do you know how to reach this FBI friend? Emma mentioned her name once. Agent Sarah Chun, I think. She works out of the federal building downtown. Richard was already reaching for his phone. I know people who can get us her direct number. While Richard made phone calls to locate Agent Chun, Marcus continued to think about where Emma might be. If Ashford had taken her, where would he keep her? It would need to be somewhere secure, somewhere he could control the situation without attracting attention. Marcus remembered something from one of the conversations he had overheard. Ashford had mentioned owning a private warehouse facility on the outskirts of the city, supposedly for storing construction equipment for their fake projects. But Marcus suspected it was actually used for more secretive purposes. "Sir," Marcus said, "I might know where they took Emma." Richard finished his phone call and turned to Marcus. "Where?" Marcus explained about the warehouse facility. "If they're holding her somewhere, that would be the logical place. It's isolated, secure, and under their complete control." "We need to get there immediately," Richard said. "Sir, with all due respect, you're not in any condition for a rescue mission. You need to stay here and coordinate with the FBI. I should go to the warehouse and see if Emma is there." Richard started to protest, but Marcus cut him off. "Think about it practically, sir. I know the building layouts. I'm used to moving around quietly, and if something goes wrong, you need to be available to work with law enforcement. Besides, if this is just a false alarm and Emma is safe somewhere else, you don't want to end up having another heart episode in an abandoned warehouse." Richard reluctantly agreed with Marcus's logic. "But you're not going alone. I'm calling my head of security to meet you there, and Agent Chen should have people on the way within the hour." The warehouse district was a maze of industrial buildings and dark alleys on the eastern edge of the city. Marcus drove slowly through the empty streets, looking for the address he had found in Ashford's files. The area was mostly abandoned at night, with only a few security lights casting long shadows between the buildings. Marcus found the warehouse Emma had mentioned, a large concrete structure surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. A sign on the gate read, "Ashford Industrial Storage, Private Property, No Trespassing." There were 2 cars parked in front of the building, including Ashford's black luxury sedan. Marcus parked his old pickup truck 2 blocks away and walked back to the warehouse on foot. He had changed out of his janitor's uniform into dark clothing that would help him blend into the shadows. In his pocket, he carried a small flashlight and his cell phone, which was set to silent mode. As Marcus approached the fence, he saw that the main gate was secured with a heavy padlock and chain. But his years of maintenance work had taught him to look for alternative access points. He walked around the perimeter of the property until he found a section where the fence had been damaged, probably by a delivery truck that had backed into it. The damaged area created a gap just large enough for a person to squeeze through. Marcus carefully worked his way through the opening, trying to avoid the sharp edges of the torn metal. Once inside the compound, he moved slowly toward the main building, staying in the shadows and watching for any signs of security guards or surveillance cameras. The warehouse was enormous, easily big enough to store construction equipment for major projects. But as Marcus got closer, he could see that it wasn't being used for legitimate storage. There were no construction vehicles or building materials visible anywhere. Instead, the building looked more like it had been converted into some kind of processing facility. Marcus found a side door that was slightly open. Through the gap, he could see lights inside the building and hear voices. He pressed himself against the wall next to the door and listened carefully. "Can't keep her here much longer," someone was saying. Marcus recognized David Chen's voice. "If her father calls the police, they'll start looking for her." "Let them look," Ashford replied. "By tomorrow morning, Richard Blackstone will have signed over control of his company to us. Once that's done, it won't matter what his daughter says or does." "What if he doesn't sign?" a third voice asked. Marcus thought it might be Sarah Mitchell. "He'll sign," Ashford said confidently. "We have his daughter. We have evidence that makes him look mentally incompetent. And we have a board of directors who will vote to remove him if he doesn't cooperate. He doesn't have any good options." Marcus felt sick. These people were talking about Emma as if she were just another business asset to be manipulated. "What about the janitor?" Chen asked. "Security says he's been asking questions about our schedule lately. He might know more than we think." "Marcus Williams is a nobody," Mitchell replied. "He's been cleaning offices for 20 years. Even if he has seen or heard something, who's going to believe a janitor over respected business executives?" "Still, we should probably deal with him after we finish with the Blackstones," Ashford said. "We can't afford to leave any loose ends." Marcus realized that his own life was in danger too. These people weren't just thieves. They were willing to kill to protect their operation. Marcus carefully pushed the door open a little wider and peered inside. The warehouse had been divided into several sections. Near the front, there was an office area with desks, computers, and filing cabinets. Toward the back, there were several smaller rooms that looked like they might be used for storage or meetings. Marcus could see Ashford, Chun, and Mitchell standing near the office area, examining some documents spread out on a table. They appeared to be reviewing contracts and legal papers, probably preparing for their final takeover of Blackstone Industries. But Marcus didn't see Emma anywhere. If she was being held in the warehouse, she must be in one of the back rooms. Marcus waited until the three conspirators became absorbed in their discussion, then slipped inside the building. He moved carefully through the shadows, using the large support pillars and storage equipment to stay hidden. The warehouse smelled of motor oil and chemicals, suggesting that it had been used for some kind of industrial processing. As Marcus made his way toward the back of the building, he heard a new voice. Someone was talking quietly, but Marcus couldn't make out the words. The voice seemed to be coming from one of the small rooms in the rear section of the warehouse. Marcus crept closer, moving from pillar to pillar. As he got nearer to the back rooms, he could hear the voice more clearly. It was Emma, and she sounded frightened but determined. "You can't keep me here forever," Emma was saying. "People will start looking for me. My father will call the police." "Your father has bigger problems to worry about right now," replied a voice that Marcus didn't recognize. "He's about to lose everything he's worked for his entire life. I doubt he has time to worry about a rebellious daughter who's probably just out partying with her college friends." Marcus could see light coming from under the door of one of the back rooms. He moved closer, trying to stay hidden behind a stack of wooden crates. "My father isn't stupid," Emma continued. "He's starting to realize what you people have been doing. When he figures out that you've kidnapped me, he'll bring down the entire weight of law enforcement on your heads." The unknown voice laughed. "Your father is a broken old man who's about to have a complete mental breakdown. By the time anyone takes his accusations seriously, we'll be long gone with his money." Marcus realized that Emma was being guarded by at least one person, probably armed. He needed to create a distraction that would allow him to get her out safely. Marcus pulled out his cell phone and sent a text message to Richard Blackstone. "Found Emma. She's alive. Warehouse backroom. Need distraction in 5 minutes. Call police now." Then, Marcus began looking around the warehouse for something he could use to his advantage. Near the office area, he spotted a fire alarm pull station mounted on the wall. If he could set off the fire alarm, it might create enough confusion to give him a chance to rescue Emma. But first, he needed to get closer to Emma's location so he could act quickly when the alarm sounded. Marcus worked his way around the perimeter of the warehouse, staying in the shadows. As he moved, he could hear Ashford's group continuing their discussion about the final details of their takeover plan. "The board meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow," Ashford was saying. "We'll present the evidence of Richard's mental incompetence, along with the financial reports showing his poor decision-making. The vote to remove him should be unanimous." "What about the employees?" Chen asked. "Some of them have been with the company for decades. They might cause problems if they think we're stealing it from Blackstone." "We'll handle the employees the same way we've handled everything else," Mitchell replied. "Gradual changes, carefully managed communications, and elimination of anyone who poses a real threat. Within 6 months, Blackstone Industries will be completely under our control, and no one will remember how things used to be." Marcus felt nauseated by their casual discussion of destroying people's lives and livelihoods. But he forced himself to focus on the immediate problem, getting Emma out safely. Marcus reached the back section of the warehouse and could see the room where Emma was being held. There was a small window in the door, and through it he could see Emma sitting in a chair with her hands tied behind her back. A large man in a security guard uniform was standing near the door, holding what appeared to be a pistol. Marcus realized that he couldn't overpower an armed guard. He needed a better plan. Marcus checked his phone for the time. It had been almost 5 minutes since he texted Richard. If everything was going according to plan, law enforcement should be on the way. But Marcus couldn't wait for them to arrive. Emma was in immediate danger, and Ashford's group was preparing to complete their takeover in the morning. Marcus decided to take a calculated risk. He worked his way back toward the front of the warehouse, moving as quietly as possible. When he reached the fire alarm, he could hear Ashford's group still discussing their plans, their backs turned to his location. Marcus pulled the fire alarm. Immediately, the warehouse filled with the deafening sound of sirens and flashing lights. Ashford, Chun, and Mitchell looked around in confusion and alarm. What the hell is that? Ashford shouted over the noise. Fire alarm, Chen replied. Someone must have triggered it. Check the building, Ashford ordered. Make sure we don't have any unwanted visitors. As the three conspirators began searching the warehouse, Marcus ran toward the back rooms. He could hear the guards shouting over the alarm, probably trying to contact Ashford on a radio or phone. Marcus reached the door to Emma's room and looked through the window. The guard was standing with his back to the door, apparently trying to hear something over the noise of the fire alarm. Marcus tried the door handle. It was unlocked. Marcus burst through the door, tackling the guard from behind. The man was caught completely off guard by Marcus's sudden appearance. They struggled for control of the gun, rolling across the floor of the small room. Marcus, Emma shouted. Behind you. Marcus looked up to see David Chun entering the room, holding his own pistol. Well, Chun said with a cold smile. The janitor who knows too much. Marcus realized that he had walked into a trap. But, before Chun could fire, the room suddenly filled with bright lights and the sound of shouting voices. FBI. Everyone on the ground. Now, federal agents swarmed into the warehouse, surrounding Ashford, Chun, Mitchell, and the security guard. Marcus had never been so happy to hear law enforcement officers in his entire life. Agent Sarah Chun, Emma's college friend, entered the room with her weapon drawn. Emma, are you hurt? I'm okay, Emma replied as Marcus worked to untie her hands. But these people have been holding me here for hours, planning to use me as leverage against my father. Agent Chun turned to David Chun, who was now lying face down on the floor with his hands zip-tied behind his back. David Chun, you're under arrest for kidnapping, conspiracy, fraud, and about 20 other federal charges. You have the right to remain silent. As the FBI agents processed the crime scene and arrested the conspirators, Marcus and Emma found themselves sitting outside the warehouse, wrapped in blankets, and giving statements to investigators. How did you know to call Agent Chen? Marcus asked Emma. I didn't, Emma replied. After they grabbed me from my apartment, I managed to send one text message before they took my phone. I sent it to you, but I guess my father got it instead. Marcus checked his phone and saw that he had missed several messages from Richard Blackstone, including one that said, FBI on the way. Agent Chen coordinating with local police. Stay safe. Your father figured out how to reach Agent Chen, Marcus explained. He probably used his business contacts to track her down. An FBI agent approached them. The warehouse is secured, and we've recovered a substantial amount of evidence. Computer files, financial records, communications with other criminal organizations. This looks like it was the headquarters for a major corporate takeover operation. Agent Chen joined them a few minutes later. Emma, I'm sorry we didn't take 3 months later. Marcus Williams walked through the front entrance of Blackstone Industries wearing a tailored suit instead of his old janitor's uniform. The marble lobby looked the same as it always had, but Marcus's role in the building had changed completely. The nameplate on his new office door read, Marcus Williams, Director of Internal Security and Compliance. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. In the weeks following Ashford's arrest, Richard Blackstone had insisted on personally reviewing every aspect of his company's operations. What they discovered was even worse than they had initially imagined. Ashford's conspiracy had penetrated every level of the organization, from the board of directors down to middle management positions. The depth of the infiltration was incredible, Emma had explained to Marcus during one of their debriefing sessions with the FBI. They didn't just steal money from us. They systematically replaced our entire corporate culture with people who were either working for them directly or who could be manipulated into supporting their agenda. The investigation revealed that Ashford's group had been planning their takeover of Blackstone Industries for over 5 years, not 3. They had identified Richard Blackstone as a target long before they ever made contact with him. They had researched his personality, his business practices, his family relationships, and his health history. When Richard had his first heart attack, they saw it as the perfect opportunity to put their plan into motion. They knew that Dad's health problems would make him think about succession planning, Emma explained. So they positioned themselves as the perfect solution. Experienced business executives who could help him transition the company to the next generation while protecting his legacy. But the reality was much different. Ashford's group had no intention of protecting Richard's legacy. Their plan was to strip the company of its assets, sell off the profitable divisions, and leave nothing but an empty shell. The financial damage was staggering. Over the course of 3 years, Ashford's group had stolen nearly $40 million from Blackstone Industries through fake investments, inflated consulting fees, and fraudulent contracts with shell companies they controlled. They had also committed the company to long-term agreements that would have cost an additional $60 million over the next 5 years. If we hadn't stopped them when we did, the company would have been bankrupt within 18 months, Richard told Marcus during one of their regular meetings. Everything I built over 40 years would have been gone. The human cost was equally devastating. Ashford's group had fired or forced out over 200 long-term employees, replacing them with people who were either part of the conspiracy or who could be easily controlled. Many of the fired employees were older workers who had difficulty finding new jobs, or single parents who depended on their Blackstone Industries salaries to support their families. These weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, Emma said angrily during a meeting with federal prosecutors. These were real people whose lives were destroyed because of what Ashford's group did. Some of them lost their homes, their retirement savings, their health insurance. The ripple effects went far beyond the immediate financial theft. The legal proceedings moved quickly once the FBI had access to all the evidence that Marcus and Emma had gathered, plus the massive amount of additional documentation found in the warehouse. Ashford, Chun, and Mitchell were all charged with multiple federal crimes, including conspiracy, wire fraud, money laundering, and kidnapping. The security guard who had held Emma was charged as an accessory. But the conspiracy extended far beyond those 4 individuals. The investigation uncovered a network of corrupt lawyers, accountants, bankers, and business consultants who had been working with Ashford's group. Some of them were charged with crimes, while others lost their professional licenses and faced civil lawsuits. What we discovered was essentially a criminal enterprise disguised as a consulting firm, Agent Sarah Chun explained during a press conference. They had developed a sophisticated system for identifying and targeting successful family businesses, then systematically taking control of those businesses through a combination of fraud, manipulation, and intimidation. The investigation also revealed that Blackstone Industries wasn't Ashford's first victim. Over the previous 10 years, his group had successfully taken over at least 8 other family-owned businesses across the country. In some cases, they had completely destroyed the companies after stripping them of their assets. In other cases, they had sold the businesses to competitors or private equity firms for huge profits. The total amount of theft and fraud probably exceeds $200 million, Agent Chin continued. And that doesn't include the value of the businesses that were destroyed or the economic impact on the communities where those businesses operated. For Marcus, the most satisfying part of the aftermath was watching Richard Blackstone regain his health and confidence. Once the stress of fighting the conspiracy was removed, Richard's heart condition stabilized dramatically. His doctors were amazed by his improvement. "I feel like I've gotten my life back," Richard told Marcus during one of their conversations. "For 3 years, I felt like I was losing my mind. I couldn't understand why nothing made sense anymore, why every decision I made seemed to backfire, why people I trusted were giving me advice that felt wrong." Richard had also rebuilt his relationship with Emma. The crisis had brought them closer together than they had been since Emma was a child. "I owe Emma an enormous apology," Richard admitted. "She was trying to protect me, trying to save the company, and I dismissed her concerns because I believed what Ashford was telling me about her. I almost lost my daughter because I trusted the wrong people." Emma had decided to take a more active role in the family business. After completing her college degree, she enrolled in a graduate program in business administration with a focus on corporate governance and fraud prevention. "I want to make sure that what happened to us never happens to another family," Emma explained. "There are probably hundreds of businesses out there that are being targeted by people like Ashford. If we can help other families recognize the warning signs and protect themselves, then something good will come out of what we went through." For Marcus, the changes in his life were the most dramatic of all. Richard had insisted on promoting him to a senior management position, despite Marcus's lack of formal business education. "Marcus has something that can't be taught in business school," Richard explained to the company's board of directors. "He has integrity, intelligence, and the ability to see through deception." Those qualities are exactly what we need to rebuild this company and prevent future infiltration. Marcus's new position involved overseeing all aspects of internal security and compliance for Blackstone Industries. He worked with external auditors to review all financial transactions, investigated any suspicious activities, and developed policies to prevent future fraud. He also supervised the hiring process to ensure that new employees were thoroughly vetted. It's funny, Marcus told his wife one evening as they discussed his career change. For 20 years, I was invisible in that building. I saw everything and heard everything, but nobody paid any attention to me. Now my job is to pay attention to everything and everyone, to make sure the company is protected. Marcus's daughter had been accepted to college with a full scholarship, partially funded by a grant that Richard Blackstone had established for the children of company employees. Marcus no longer had to worry about tuition payments or working extra shifts to make ends meet. "Dad, I'm so proud of what you did," his daughter told him. "You risked everything to help people you barely knew, and you saved hundreds of jobs, and probably prevented a lot of other families from being victimized." The story of Marcus and Emma's partnership had attracted national media attention. Several news organizations had covered the story, focusing on how an unlikely alliance between a billionaire's daughter and a janitor had exposed a major corporate conspiracy. Marcus had been reluctant to give interviews, but Emma had convinced him that publicity might help other potential victims recognize similar schemes. "The more people know about how these conspiracies work, the harder it will be for criminals to succeed," Emma argued. "Your story shows that ordinary people can make a difference, that you don't need to be wealthy or powerful to fight corruption." Marcus had also been contacted by law enforcement agencies in other states, asking for his help in investigating similar cases. His experience in gathering evidence and his understanding of how corporate conspiracies operate had made him a valuable resource for federal investigators. "We've identified at least 12 other businesses that show patterns similar to what happened at Blackstone Industries," Agent Chin told Marcus during one of their regular consultation meetings. "Your insights into how the conspirators operate have been crucial in building cases against them." The financial recovery for Blackstone Industries had been better than anyone expected. Through asset forfeiture and civil lawsuits, they had recovered about $30 million of the $40 million that had been stolen. They had also been able to cancel most of the fraudulent contracts that Ashford's group had committed them to. "We're not just surviving," Richard told Marcus 6 months after the conspiracy was exposed. "We're actually stronger than we were before this happened. We've learned valuable lessons about corporate governance. We've implemented much better security procedures, and we've rebuilt our management team with people we can trust completely." Richard had also used the crisis as an opportunity to modernize and improve the company's operations. With Emma's help, they had invested in new technology, expanded into new markets, and developed innovative products that were generating substantial new revenue. "In a strange way, Ashford's attack on our company forced us to examine every aspect of how we do business," Emma explained. "We discovered inefficiencies and missed opportunities that we probably never would have noticed otherwise. The company that emerged from this crisis is much better positioned for the future." The criminal trials had concluded with significant prison sentences for all the main conspirators. Ashford received 25 years in federal prison, while Chun and Mitchell each received 15 years. The security guard who had helped kidnap Emma received 5 years. Justice was served, but the real victory was preventing them from destroying more families and businesses, Marcus reflected during the final sentencing hearing. As Marcus sat in his new office on the 35th floor of Blackstone Industries, looking out at the city skyline, he thought about how much his life had changed. He was no longer invisible, no longer struggling to pay bills, no longer worried about his daughter's future. But, more importantly, he had learned that ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary things when they had the courage to act on their convictions. Emma knocked on his office door and entered with a stack of reports. She was now officially the vice president of operations, working closely with her father to run the company. "Marcus, we just received word that the FBI has made arrests in 3 more cities based on the intelligence we provided," Emma said excitedly. "They estimate that over 50 businesses and hundreds of families will be protected from similar conspiracies." Marcus smiled, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. When Emma had first approached him that rainy night in her father's office, pleading for help to save her father, Marcus could never have imagined that their partnership would have such far-reaching consequences. You know what the best part is? Marcus told Emma, 6 months ago, I was just trying to help one family save their business. Now we've helped protect dozens of families and businesses across the country. Sometimes small actions can lead to much bigger changes than we ever expect. Emma nodded, understanding exactly what Marcus meant. Dad always taught me that success isn't just about making money or building a business. It's about taking care of the people around you and leaving the world a little better than you found it. As the sun set over the city, Marcus reflected on the truth of those words. He had started as a janitor who just wanted to help a frightened young woman save her father. But, in the end, he had become part of something much larger, a fight against corruption and exploitation that would protect countless innocent people from becoming victims. The invisible janitor had become visible, and his visibility had made all the difference in the world. Your concerns more seriously when you first contacted me. If you hadn't gathered so much preliminary evidence, we never would have been able to move this quickly. What happens now? Emma asked. Now we dismantle their entire operation, Agent Chin replied. Based on what we've found here, Ashford's group has been targeting family businesses across the country. We've already identified at least 6 other companies that were probably victimized by similar schemes. Marcus felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not only had they saved Emma and her father's company, but they had exposed a criminal operation that had been hurting families and businesses for years. As dawn broke over the warehouse district, Marcus realized that his life as an invisible janitor was probably over. But, for the first time in years, he was looking forward to whatever came next. As they prepared to leave the office, Richard grabbed Marcus's arm. Marcus, I owe you an apology. And a debt that I can never repay. If you hadn't been willing to help Emma, we never would have discovered what was happening until it was too late. Marcus nodded. Let's just focus on getting your daughter back safely, sir. We can talk about the rest later. As Marcus left the building and headed toward the warehouse district, he realized that the next few hours would determine the outcome of everything they had worked for. Emma's safety, Richard Blackstone's company, and the futures of hundreds of employees all depended on what happened next. Marcus had never imagined that his quiet life as a janitor would lead him into a situation like this. But, as he drove through the dark streets toward what might be a dangerous confrontation, he felt more alive and purposeful than he had in years. For once in his life, he was doing something that truly mattered, something that could make a real difference. The final battle for Blackstone Industries was about to begin, and Marcus Williams, the invisible janitor, was about to become the most important person in the fight. The war for Blackstone Industries was entering its most dangerous phase, and Marcus was about to discover just how far some people were willing to go to protect their criminal enterprises. Oh, I've got a family to think about. Emma's face lit up with relief and gratitude. Thank you, Marcus. I can't tell you what this means to me. As they began to plan their investigation, Marcus realized that his quiet life as an invisible janitor was about to become much more complicated. But, for the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something that really mattered, something that could make a difference in the world. The rain continued to pound against the windows as Marcus and Emma worked through the night, beginning a partnership that would change both of their lives forever.